We cannot have a minister that wears a funny hat that sits in Pretoria that thinks he's going to fight crime in Phoenix and Umlazi, Richards Bay and Newcastle. Asikwazi ukuba no minister ogqoke isigqoko esiphedayo ohlala ePitoli ocabanga ukuthi uzovikela imiphakathi yethu. He is the minister of funerals and court appearances. Akasiyena uminister wamaphoyisa.
So Bheki Cele has come under fire lately by many DA members, right? And I think it's understandable because a lot of people have sort of termed South Africa as the murder capital of the world. I think that's not a really nice acronym to have for a nation. But let's listen to what Chris Pappas says about his description of crime in South Africa and Bheki Cele, the Minister of Police. And I'll be back for some analysis.
Now, I know that load shedding has ended. Ngiyazi ukuthi load shedding noma ukucima kwegesi ukuhambile. Kodwa ngiyanithembisa ngomhla ka-30 uyabuya. We cannot talk about jobs if we do not end load shedding. So we will work hard to end load shedding in KwaZulu-Natal. For this economy to grow, we have to end load shedding. Emlazi ngakhuluma noXolani. Bakhona basemlazi namhlanje. I spoke to Xolani, a young man who has no family, ohlala endlini yodaka. He has no job because he was not given the opportunity to finish at school. Xolani embraced me, wangibamba uXolani. Wathi ngiyabonga uthi ungibona njengomuntu. Thank you for seeing me as a human being. And my promise to you as Premier is that no person, no young person will be left behind. Sizoyikhipha ipolitiki ezikoleni and ensure that our children have proper toilets, that our children have libraries and computer labs and science labs, ukuze bakwazi ukufunda ngokuphelele. Entuzuma, I met with Mr. Mjili, who has a small piece of land. Unomhlaba omncane lapha eNtuzuma. Umjili udayisa ama-veg, he sells vegetables to look after his wife and 2 children. But because of the sewage, kunendle engene emfuleni, sewage in the river, he can no longer water his vegetables and sell them to support his family. He said to me, washo kumina, Chris, I'm not a para, I'm not a criminal. All I want to do is support my family. Angisiloni para, angisiloni isigebengu, ngifuna ukunakekela umndeni wami. So when I'm Premier, I will fix every leak and I will make sure that there's water in every tap. Kuzoba namanzi impompi nempompi jikelele. I visited Mrs. Haripasad. She is a single pensioner living on a state grant in an RDP house in Trenance Park. The contractor who built her house only because he got a tender because he's a comrade and works for government. The house is so badly built that every time it rains, magneta, umuzi wakho ugcwala imvula, ugcwala amanzi. It fills with water and dirty water. Sadly, Mrs. Haripasad is also the victim of crime. Kunobugebengu le ndawo ahlala kuyona. And she has been targeted and the police have done nothing. As she cried on my shoulder, she said, "The DA is my only hope. Yithemba lami lokugcina iDA." So when I am Premier, I will make sure that people like Mrs. Haripasad are protected by establishing a provincial police service. Sizowakha umbutho wamaphoyisa walana esifundazweni, iKZNPS. We cannot have a minister that wears a funny hat that sits in Pretoria that thinks he's going to fight crime in Phoenix and Umlazi, Richards Bay and Newcastle. Asikwazi ukuba no minister ogqoke isigqoko esiphedayo ohlala ePitoli ocabanga ukuthi uzovikela imiphakathi yethu. He is the minister of funerals and court appearances. Akasiyena uminister wamaphoyisa lo ophedayo lapha.
Yeah, so what do you guys think? I know I really have to go through the history to really understand how crime took off in South Africa. I know one of the really touching stories I heard of crime in South Africa was by this lady. What's her name now? I don't remember, but she was stabbed. If you remember in the comments, please remind me. But she was stabbed multiple times in her neck, and she actually had to, at some point, hold her head in place to seek for help after the incident of rape and other forms of violence was carried out on her. And the proponents of this act weren't even, those who would expect probably would be the blacks or the coloreds or the Indian, but they were also white South Africans, And so many times I really wonder why crime took off in South Africa. Gayton Mackenzie, I'll be posting a video soon where he speaks about that growing up, one of the reasons why he was sent to jail was because of the fact that growing up you had only two options as a South African, maybe young colored South Africans, which was to say yes and bow to whiteness or to a white boss, or no, and then go along the way of crime and ended up in jail. So that's why he ended up in jail. But now that he's out, he's been a successful entrepreneur, which contradicts his lack of success as a criminal. And so I don't know, really, in this instance now, for example, the whites in crime in South Africa, what probably could be driving that? It might be really difficult to explain. Or could it be that the entire violence that actually characterized the transition from apartheid to a rainbow nation in 1994 had incubations of a well of anger and violence, to which crime now became that outlet to allow for the effervescence of that anger from apartheid all the way to democracy? Or how then do we conceptualize the growth and the magnificence of crime in South Africa, and how it has the growth of crime has been such a really problematic concept that even the police in South Africa isn't able to grasp. I know some videos have actually, I saw one of the town halls with Julius Malema at the time, when one of the colored elderlies actually informed the public that the police was the mafia. This was his own interpretation, not mine. But a lot of people also say that the mafia is made up of most of these big guys in government, in the higher places, and that that's one area to understand the root source of crime. It's really multi-sided. It's really difficult to explain. But we really hope that Chris Pappas, like he says, he has this idea of a provincial policing where KZN would have its own police, so that Bheki Cele wouldn't be in Pretoria, and because of the distance and all that there has to be a localized form of police deployed within the provinces, and that way crime could be measured and monitored more closely. I think that's a really interesting policy. That's a really interesting concept, but I don't know how much it will be favorable to the government of the day. And Gayton Mackenzie has on his own plate that he's gonna, first of all, kick out all the illegal foreigners, and then he has a really also interesting way to go against crime. Him being being termed a criminal previously, he has a really interesting vision to attack crime from the level of the underworld. So I really don't know how South Africa would really grapple with this problem of crime. But we're really hopeful that South Africa can become safer. A lot of people who visit, tourists especially who visit South Africa, have actually documented the fact that that they love the country, they love the weather, they love the place. It's really peaceful, and it's really colorful and has an excellent vibrance, especially from the people. But the only issue they've always had most of the time they visited was that either there was a violence in the apartment they stayed in form of a robbery, or some form of other violence in a car break-in or something like that. And this has been something that has been ongoing for a while. And so I hope that the next leaders coming into power could take note and see how to tackle the root causes of violence in South Africa, and have that, attacked from the root and not necessarily solving these top-end issues, which I think the likes of Bheki Cele are actually trying their best to do, but it seems to be failing. But what do you guys think about this speech by Chris Pappas? Share your thoughts in the comments.